My name is Charity Majors. I guess I mostly self-identify as an operations engineer. I've done everything basically back-end wise, DBA, some software engineering, a lot of operations. I'm CTO now, starting a startup. I've done a bunch of management. I flit. I don't. And I'm a big proponent of flitting.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, should I go into management? And I'm like, yeah, for a while. I believe that every engineer will be a better engineer and a more effective tech lead if they spend some time as a manager, even if it's not their life's calling. It makes them more empathetic towards the weird and strange positions that managers get put in. It makes them better at sort of empathizing with and helping the managers achieve their goals. And I am also a big fan of people who start managing. I'm like, okay, you can do that for about 3 years, and then you should spend some time as an IC, because if you don't, you get stale, and you lose respect. You can be a professional manager for the rest of your life, and you can find a place where you can sit and get comfy as a manager for 10 years, but you will not command the same kind of respect as if you periodically just go back and do work and get up to speed and latest stuff. So yeah, and it could just be my bias, but I'm a big fan of the pendulum swing. Spend some time doing it. As you grow and you become someone who's a technical leader, you don't have credibility if you don't know, not just as a top level down, but as a no, really in the trenches, this is what it feels like, to build this shit. And conversely, in my experience, there comes a point where you're like, no, I want to have more control. I was really fortunate in finding just a really great set of friends who were total geeks about shit, and they would answer all my dumb questions, and they saw that I was excited, and they hooked me up with starter jobs as being a sysadmin for the mass stats department, and then I was sysadmin for this is late 90s, right? Sysadmin I had root for the entire campus. I'm 17. I could read every professor's mail spool if I wanted to, I'm pretty sure they don't do that anymore. But one of the best network engineers I know was our receptionist. He didn't know shit about computers, but he was bored, and we would just take him to the data center with us, because we needed help racking servers. And he was curious, and he had a very rigorous, mind that was being underused. And so we'd ask questions, and we would answer them. And he'd be like, is there anything else I can do? I'm bored sitting at my desk, answering phones and letting people in the door. And we were like, shit, yeah, here's a list of shit, And over the course of a year, he is literally one of the best. I believe so much in people have so much potential, and if you my co-founder Christine, fucking amazing, one of the best engineers I know, went to MIT, took the very traditional path, and she's like, I learned shit about software engineering from MIT. She learned math, she learned, but she's the stuff that I learned, I learned by being on the job and interested and enthused. And I get really irritated and pissed off at a lot of Bay Area employers who don't hire for potential, who, they'll set out this list of 30 or 40 pieces of technology, and they're like, we want someone who knows these things. And it's Okay. And I'm sure you've seen the studies where, like, when faced with that, men will generally apply and be like, fuck yeah, I'm qualified if they hit like 50% of them. And women will be like, no, I don't know that one. I don't know that one. And they won't apply, you know? And it's like, the technologies don't fucking matter. It's the ability to learn, the actually caring, giving a shit about what the product is, and wanting to do good work. Like, when I got hired at Parse, you know, that I had never used AWS, Ruby, MongoDB, Chef, like the entire stack, you know, Rails, everything that they had built Parse on. I hadn't used any of those things, and they didn't care. They're just like, you'll learn, you know. But this is rare. This is a thing that's kind of disappearing, and I think it's unfortunate. It has gotten a lot easier to be an engineer, honestly. Like, when I started, you know, I was running FreeBSD and like running systems for the university, and if I had a question, I could try and find a friend who knew the answer, or I could read the source code in C, right? Like, those are basically man pages, sometimes useful, sometimes not. Honestly, it's like, I got really irritated a couple weeks ago at the people who were like, oh, serverless, hashtag no ops. And I'm like, honestly, like, let's start the hashtag no devs movement, because how hard is it really to glue APIs together when, like, you know, someone else built it, designed it, is supporting it, dealing with scalability, and all you have to do is write glue code, you know, and you can literally look up the snippets on Stack Overflow or like find it on GitHub. Like, it's hard. It's still like, you know, being an excellent software engineer and writing, like, maintaining and developing and reviewing code bases that empower engineers and build companies and are stable over the long term. That's hard. That's hard. Like, that's what makes a senior software engineer. But God, this isn't rocket science. I wrote a couple blog posts. I don't know if you saw them. I have a blog, charity.wtf, best TLD ever. So I'm getting over I had this knee-jerk, just angry, averse reaction to the DevOps term for a long time, and I'm making my peace with it. Yeah, there is no, there really isn't. Sysadmin, sysops, like, that is a thing that doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, in crafty corners of the world, sure. But it's just not acceptable to have people who are running systems who don't write code and who don't automate, you know? And I feel like DevOps got picked up, it got very buzzwordy. Like, the people who started the buzzword, amazing. Like Adam Jacobs from Chef, fucking amazing. Like, you know, but what they meant was empathy. What they meant was, you know, different teams working together, respecting each other's skill sets, being able to kind of cross over and make each other better in the process, you know? And I feel like the DevOps term kind of got co-opted by people who just wanted to shit on operations engineering. And so DevOps has just become a thing that means operations now. It really just means ops engineers who can write code. And fine, whatever. I think that operations engineering is, it's not software engineering light. It's not, and I've seen this so many times where, like, you know, software engineers they're like, oh fuck, you know, we just hit a wall. Our systems are unmaintainable. We know that we need, there's something we're missing, right? But then when they try and hire an interview for that operations hire, they're looking for someone to do all the shit work that they don't want to do, or to handle all of the on-call work, getting paged in the middle of the night. And the types of interview processes that they often put that person through are just like, all right, let's assume you're going to be a shitty software engineer and ask you those questions, you know? When actually it's like, it's a whole set of skills that most software engineers don't have. And they don't really recognize the absence of them, you know, and they don't recognize that they are hard and challenging and outside the scope of just writing code, you know, and writing software. It's like thinking about the life cycle of what you're building and what you're, you know, how to make it maintainable and usable by humans, how to understand what's going wrong when things go wrong. You know, that's actually deeply complicated. Like, it's an entire field in like observability and instrumentation, and you know, everybody knows like a shallow amount. Senior engineers know more, but like good ops people are like, you know, you can save yourself years of work, literally like person years of debugging if you know how to instrument and how to build, you know, systems that let you like introspect how the fuck this thing is working, right? Like, there is a depth and a breadth to really good operations work that I feel like gets really glossed over and skimmed over by this whole, oh, well, you know, just show that you can write some code, you know. So I'm like I identify as like queer, and I'm like, we need to reclaim the term operations. Like, this is a thing, you know? Like, everybody's like, oh, we don't do operations. We do.
Here and I'm proud to
Fuck yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Like, everybody's gotten allergic to the term ops, or like SRE or like production engineering. I'm like, fuck no. I do operations, you know? And that's meaningful to me. And it's whatever. It's kind of it's like a, yeah. No, I get where the DevOps people, the people who have kind of used it to mean operations plus, right? Yeah. They're using it to mean like, no, we want you to be integrated into like modern best practices. And I'm totally on board with that. It just irritates me when they kind of edge over into like devaluing the skill sets and being like, we don't do ops. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And maybe if you want to do it well, you should like value it. I never wanted to work at a big company. Like, I aggressively did not. You know, I turned down a Facebook offer in 2009, 2010, because I'm like, oh, you guys are way too big and corporate for me, you know? But I didn't have the greatest experience there. But in retrospect, there are things that I learned there that I'm still like learning to recognize the value of, like the training and the, you know, learning how other people do things. You know, it's like they actually, once a company gets to a certain size, if they're continuing to succeed, they have to start investing in their people's development and not in a just like an ad hoc, oh, you hit it off with this person, so they're gonna like, you know, help you out, but like in a systematic way. Yeah, I learned a lot. God, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world are the worst at this because they're populated with like ex-MIT, Harvard, Stanford, whatevers, who are like, well, if you can't reverse a list on the board, then you're like, and then they get there, they're like, our standards are so high. If you can't meet our standards, then like, you know, we pride ourselves at having the best engineers in the world. All right, guys, no. I've worked with you. You have a perfectly adequate mix of, you know, people who are good at answering your interview questions, but not super effective in the real world, and world-class engineers. But that's not the same as having a high bar, right? There was a turning point, like in my career, where I became aware that I had stopped being the person who was always asking for help and asking questions and needing things from other people, to where people were coming to me and asking questions, and I was able to be helpful for them. And that was transformational for me. I went from like literally like dressing like a guy in like XL t-shirts and like Levi's 501s and just like, you know, shit talking women and all this shit. It's a process, it's complicated, whatever. But to being aware of that, like, oh shit, you know, so many people have invested in me. So many people have helped me. So many people have given, you know, their time and their expertise to me. And I didn't realize it. You know, I didn't really recognize it while it was happening. And I do, like, I now feel a responsibility, especially to women who I can see are in that phase of their career where they are still asking questions, they are leaning on people, and they need the development, they need the advice, they need the, and I do feel a responsibility, especially to women in tech, to just be like, dude. Also to just be like, guys, it's not like if you listen to the professional internet feminists. Oh, don't quote me on this in the book. But if you listen to like the professional internet feminists, you would think that tech is a terrible place to work. That it's just full of harassment and like sexual like shit, and that you could never get ahead. You could never, and that's not true. Like, it's not true. It's like we live in a sexist world. You know, part of being in the world as a woman. You know, it's not especially bad in tech. It's actually awesome. There are really amazing places that you can land. There are really amazing people who will invest in you and who will help and who will, you know, accept you for who you are. I think it's not helpful, the amount of like shit talking or bad mouthing that goes on around being a woman. It's not that bad. Yeah, as a senior person, you owe it to people to invest in them, and just to like the tech stuff is easy. Like, teaching people technology is the easiest part. Teaching them best practices is more important. Teaching them how to do things well, teaching them to recognize when you're cutting corners. It's not a bad thing always. Like, if you do everything perfectly the first time, you're probably taking too long, right? But knowing when you're cutting corners and knowing when it's appropriate and when it's not, when it's helpful to the org and when it's not, understanding like the value of code reviews and how not to take it personally. Like, it's about the code. It's about our shared mission. It's not about, you know, you being a inadequate person, you know. Teaching them how to just like how to be a good coworker, you know, how to create good culture, setting an example of you know, creating a good environment. Like, this is the kind of stuff that like leads people to want to work with you over and over and over. It's the kind of thing that as a senior person, people implicitly, they take their emotional cues from you. You know, if you're freaking out, if you're not sure that it can be pulled off, if you're like, you know, that trickles down. So yeah, setting the emotional tone, teaching best practices, teaching how life-work balance, and like telling junior engineers when they need to step it up or when they need to fucking take a break, you know, take your vacation, that sort of thing. I think it's the cultural stuff that is really, really, really important to impart. It's odd because the engineers who try it and don't like it, or who don't choose that path, often have this sense of like, I'm not reaching my potential, you know, and And that's so backwards and false. Like, if you're an amazing software engineer and that's what you want to do, like, there should be a parallel and equally like valued and prized and celebrated track as an IC, where you get compensated just as much, you know, where you, yeah, like I've talked to a few people. It's weird actually lately how many people have been coming to me for career advice, and like one of the repeating themes is, you know, software engineers, maybe 30 years old, who are like, I feel like I have to go become a director in order to advance. Like, there's no, what is my path to, how do I feel like I'm making progress? I'm like, that is a goddamn shame. Like, they don't want to be managing people, yeah, but they're like, I need to feel like I'm progressing. I think that senior people should, I have a few things, just be aware of the emotional ripple effects. Like the you know, younger people, more junior people, they're paying more attention than you probably realize. Just like, you know, kids, like they have this radar, you know, for, you know, how their parents are feeling emotionally, even if they don't, yeah, they're always watching you, you know? And so if you're miserable, change it. Like, don't fucking sit there and suffer. Like, take care of yourself, carve out a place for yourself where you feel happy and rewarded, and, you know, be aggressive in taking care of yourself. You know, that like, you must apply your own mask before, you know, assisting other customers. You know, like I see people suffering in tech unnecessarily. Like, come on, you know, take care of yourself, make yourself happy, and then like, just pay attention to the people who are around you, and you know, cultivate relationships where, you know, if somebody's having a problem or someone's getting harassed or they're just like spinning their wheels and stuck, you know, just like, you have to make the first move as a senior person, and you should. Like, every person on your team, like, someone joins, they're new, reach out, have a one-on-one, you know, tell them that you're happy that they're there. Like, they're very unlikely to approach you and make the first move, you know? Your impact, it's, once you're a senior person in tech, honestly, you should be a force amplifier. Almost more than an IC, even if what you are as a software engineer and you just write code all day. Like, your primary value to the org is as a force amplifier, is bringing up everyone around. Like, fucking 10x engineers. No. The easiest way to be a 10x engineer is to make, you know, 10 other people 10% better. Like, that's a greater value to the org, right? And then those people, like, throughout their career, will remember you and speak well of you and, you know, be grateful. Yeah, and like, don't be a snob. Like, I feel like, as an industry, we are erring too far on the side of expecting people to have already proven themselves, and not just like looking for potential and for ways to tease out that potential. I'm not saying just like automatically hire everyone who applies, but like, be creative in looking for ways to help people express their best selves. You know, I think that the interview process, the interview pipeline stuff, senior people should be like, managers, directors are always going to be very risk averse, you know, because, you know, if they make a bad hire, they're the ones who have to deal with like the fallout and the whatever. We need to be less risk averse and more willing to like take a chance on people who are excited and who are motivated. And I think that senior engineers are the ones who have the power and the clout to like push for that kind of risk taking and investment in people, because they're the ones, when it comes down to it, who are actually going to be spending their time in helping new people level up.